Hey everybody, welcome back to Decide to Dominate. I am your co-host, Mike Weatherly. This is my partner in crime, DJ Dozier. Today we got a really special guest. We got Mr. Foundation, JW, John Wilkins III, CEO of Arete. He's got an amazing story that was born out of COVID, kind of similar to ours a little bit. Not where yours is way crazier than ours, but I can't wait to dig in on that. He had a short stint with the Saints, and there's a story there. Super connected to lots of college athletes. He's got a wonderful product and products that we're going to get to today. And, we're excited to have you on the show today. So, JW, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Foundation. Mr. Foundation. Mr. Foundation.
Can we start there? What is that?
Can we? Yeah. And do we need to address you as Mr. Foundation, or do we go with JW?
Well, I didn't know what to call myself, so it all came. Why am I doing this? And it was actually to build the foundation of the body. And one of the things that I always tell people is, like say you built a house, right? And you put a 2,000 square foot foundation, and then you decided and changed your mind and said, hey, I want to put a bigger house on it. And you put a 3,000 square foot home on a 2,000 square foot foundation. So it's the same thing with the body. You say, at first, it kind of works. After a while, when the weather gets bad and we start to get a little rot underneath, we have no actually foundation to actually, it be on the outside of the house. So now we get a little rot, we get a little termites, and all of a sudden, over the years, we start breaking down. And that focus of being that foundation is to build that foundation for not just our sports, but for future.
I love that analogy. I actually used to use that similar analogy when I was teaching graduate students for MBA. And I was talking about project management and making sure that the foundation is core and key. And I actually used the house example. So clearly I need to take the same advice on the body, because let me tell you and everybody out there, and we didn't get a chance to talk about this in the green room. We were talking about some other crazy stuff that I learned about DJ. Maybe we're going to get there. But I was on your product for 30 seconds, maybe? Not even. Kate's got it on video. I'm ashamed to even say it. It's probably maybe 15 seconds. Anyway, dude, I was sore for like 2 days. And I was telling, I've sent a text of your product to like at least 10 people of like, you have to check this out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like everything hurt, everything. So I'm a believer. I'm already a believer.
Your brain. So I have a functional neurologist that works with us. And what he did was he dated back, like most people, when they have their kids, they want their kids to walk really fast, like, okay, let's start holding up arms and make them walk. But what happens is in that crawling phase, it's actually when the brain is most being developed. And I had no idea. So he was trying to associate that same thing with being in that plank walk and now crawling before we run, as to how it was similar into, our daily exercise today of doing planks and plank walks.
Well, you were doing some crazy stuff on that bar, man. I know I was in rookie mode, but I'm just glad our social media team wasn't here to film anything. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I did in front of my wife yesterday. So.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you saved it for home. You didn't want to do it.
I did.
DJ did not do it, by the way. You were here.
Yeah. So I got
the audience out there.
I literally got 200 seconds in at home.
That's pretty good.
But that's in 3 days.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna get one here for the office just so we can have a little competition going on.
Yeah.
And I did get my son on it too. So.
I bought 2, but I didn't realize that I had to bring 3. So the next time I come out, I got to bring you one. You got to practice.
Exactly. When you come down for NHSCA, and we're gonna talk about that in a little bit, maybe you could bring one. All right. So we've been beating around the bush here. Let's talk about the actual product that you have. And before we get there, tell your story, because when you told us the other day, I was just like, man, amazed at your journey and everything with COVID. Just kind of, can you walk our guests through like your story?
Yes. When I was in high school, I'll date it back a little bit in high school. When I was in high school, we had started a weight training program for football. And all I would do is look at these guys lift all this weight. And I was the number 1 running back. So I felt, hey, I'm the number 1 running back. What do I need to do all this stuff for? It looked like it hurts, So as I was getting more and more recruited by bigger schools, they were asking me for not just my 40 times, but what's my bench press? What's my squat? And honestly, I didn't squat. I didn't bench. I didn't start lifting until about 3 months before I had to leave to go to college. Wow. And it just looked grueling, So I always hated working out. I felt like the benefits were not worth, how you felt afterwards, like the knee pain and the shoulders and the elbows and and I just wanted to feel fresh all the time. So when Florida State asked me for my scores, my SAT scores and my weight room stuff and my 40 time, I said, all right, hey, the SAT I crashed, I bombed. I was actually the first year Prop 48, so I couldn't receive money for going to school, so I didn't have to go to some smaller schools. But I fast forwarded real quick and I said, hey, I got to start lifting. Within a month, I was benching 275. In 3 months, I was benching 325, and they put me in the bench press contest, and I won it at 325.
Wow.
So I already had natural strength. I guess it was, my upbringing, but I never really liked it. I knew I had to do it. And then when I got to college, I went to East Stroudsburg. I was actually the strongest kid on the team. I had a 540 bench press, I had a 600 squat, and I had a 720 deadlift. And I can curl 100-pound dumbbells, and I can shrug 645s on each side. So it was my therapy, but it was a lot of damage, being done. And I felt like after all those lifts and after everything that I did, the only thing that made me feel faster and stronger was actually all my pull-ups and push-ups and, that stuff and sprints and, that was, when Herschel Walker was around saying he did 1,000. Yeah.
I was just going to talk about that.
Yeah. So that's how I felt. So fast forward
so John, you're saying that while you were in high school, before you got to college, that the bulk of your strength came from those exercises, the pull-ups, sit-ups, push-ups, whatever you were doing,
going back to the foundation,
the
core, okay.
I didn't know it. I just crazy uncle that was in the army, and he would just have all these contests all the time, and I would just win them all, with all my cousins.
Who all are had a stint with the NFL too, by the way. I've never met someone who has so many cousins and family members that played or had a time in the NFL. DJ and I were talking about that after the other day.
And funny, when I saw the book, Decide to Dominate, I actually looked back on my life and I tried to decide to dominate probably 15 to 25 times in my life. So I knew something was wrong, and I leaned on God only when there was something wrong, so I kept restarting this. So when I saw the book and it said Decide to Dominate, it fit every single time that I tried to get closer to God for a reason, not just to be close to God. So after it was great. After I saw the book, I said, you know what, that really.
I tell you that we have a lot of our shows that we do that tie back to faith. I mean, clearly your journey does too. It's amazing.
Yeah. All right. So we'll get to COVID. I probably got COVID from my gym. Somebody came in barking like a dog, and I was like, ooh. And she said it was seasonal allergies. And I was like, okay. Right. So a couple days later, I started coughing. And within 24 hours, that cough became a bark, became a not breathing. So my wife and I, we tested ourselves and we had COVID. She was, kind of going in the same direction, but I went fast. So that same night, about 4:00 in the morning, probably the worst thing I could do is go take a shower. Took a hot shower and it got worse. So then laid back down in bed and she said, no, we are going to the hospital. And I was like, okay. So she brought me to the hospital. Nobody was allowed in. So I went in by myself, and they took one look at me and they wristband me up and brought me into a room. And about a couple minutes later, I had a lot of people coming in, giving me tests to see actually if I had COVID, because when they swabbed me, it came up negative. They said they had to do blood work to see if I had COVID because COVID was so deep it couldn't be recognized anymore on that little test, which I thought was pretty odd. And so when I got to the hospital, after they did blood work, they came in about, I don't know, about a half hour later, and there's about 8 of them. And they put ports in my arms. They gave me a shot in my stomach. And I said, hey, what's going on? They say, don't worry about it. Take these supplements. I took these supplements, took these meds, and then they all out the door.
Let me tell you something. Anytime you see 8 people come in a hospital room at one time, it can't be something good, right? There's like something bad going on.
That's what
all at the same time.
Right.
I mean, I felt like I was going to die. I thought I was really.
Right. And they're like, oh, no, you're fine. And you're like,
yeah,
no, that's going wrong.
So when they left, the infectious disease doctor came in and he explained how he detected the COVID, not like a normal, test. And he said that, in about 24 hours, something would have happened. You would have had a pulmonary embolism, a heart attack, or a stroke, because my lungs crystallized, and that was causing the bark coughing and not being able to have a deep breath. So I would take, and then within the 5 days while I was in the hospital, they don't actually come in your room unless they have to do blood work, and they look like they're from the man on the moon. I mean, they take your food, and when they're ready, because it was so crowded, they took my plate and they opened the door a little bit and pushed it in. I had to get up and go to the door and get it.
Gosh, it was like you were in prison.
5 days, lost 26 pounds. I could not get up and take a shower until like the 3rd day. I was just sweating and sweating.
Wow.
And when they came in the room to do blood work, they couldn't find the veins. I was so withdrawn and so dehydrated, and so that, I think the 2nd day I got on my text, and I text all my clients, I text my family. I said, hey, look, I said, I may not make it,
Yeah.
And, later on, finding out my clients were crying for days. They thought they were going to lose me because I train a lot of kids, And I finally got out of the hospital. I felt stronger. I couldn't walk to the mailbox to get the mail. Every time I took a deep breath with that cold air, because it was in January, so then I had to wear like a mask to filter the air in so I don't get that cold air on my lungs. And that's when it really dawned on me, all the things that I didn't like with that heavy lifting, it just, and I wanted the inside work, pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups and all things like that. It was actually the same thing with my nutrition and with my body besides weight training. It's like I went online and I said, okay, well, how are all these fitness bodybuilders and stuff dying? You see, I looked down the list. It's like, this bodybuilder died, this bodybuilder died, this bodybuilder died, this workout person died, this CrossFit person died. And I'm like, well, my uncle, 300 pounds, and he didn't die. And I'm sitting like, okay, so what's wrong with this picture? So all the while, with my fitness and with my, strength training, not liking that stuff, I didn't realize that it was starting to all connect, that it was the foundation, that it was the core. If you were not strong internally, how could you be like that on the outside, But I would see this fit person with veins and abs and all that stuff. He couldn't beat COVID. He died. And I'm like, well, you know what? Really, it is the inside out. And that's what started prompting my journey. And I had always done plank walks and stuff like that with my kids, but it really pushed me to that next level. Like I eat, foods that are grass-fed, grass-finished, or organic. Where's the source coming from? Like, what is in that meat? What is in those vegetables? What is in that water? What is in that? And that's what, and then fast forward the year after that, I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought I had COVID again. It was the same exact feeling. And all the while, doing all these plank walks and plank jumps, parents would say, hey, I love what you're doing, but you got those dumbbells in your hand. And when they can't do it, it was rubbing on their shoulders. So it was taking the first two or three layers of skin off. So they're like, hey, I don't mind. I said, but could we not do those? So then I said, that's half my workouts.
Right.
If I don't figure this out, So then I think, well, let me come up with a dumbbell that had like, it weighs nothing. It was big enough that a big guy could, not touch his knuckles on the floor. and it was light enough for a 6-year-old to use and also light enough for an 80-year-old to use because my clientele is very versatile and pretty big. And one night I woke up and I knew it was God because I felt like I had COVID again, except I had a flash of like yellow light in my head, and the image of this bar was actually in my head. And I sat up on the side of the bed. I looked at my wife and I said, okay, just get out of bed slowly, go into the kitchen. I couldn't find anything to draw on. All in the kitchen is like, packages and stuff. So I saw my wife's yellow book that she keeps all of her passwords in. And I said, let me start the back. So I started this bar and all different variations of this bar. And for the next 3.5 months, God woke me up around the same time every night or morning, and I drew out 41 other tools. And I will have to tell you, the bar is the easiest.
Wow. And so we saw the bar and we saw the bands. So are those 2 of the 41 tools that you eventually will develop? Wow. Well, talk about the bar and kind of explain what it is and how it works and operates and why it's been so beneficial to all of your clients.
So the bar, I went to my local, because this image, I drew it out. So I had to go find somebody to fabricate one. So I went to one guy and he fabricated it. And I was trying to really explain it to him. And I don't think he was getting it. So 2 doors down from me, I just happened to bump into this guy. And he was like, hey, yeah, I'm a fabricator. I said, oh, hey, I got something for you. So all it is it's the same steel as building a building. It's the same steel that holds up concrete. It holds up, you can 5 floors deep with this steel. And when they cut it to the sizes that I wanted, and then they welded it together, I said to myself, okay, well, I have 5 or 6 exercises for this, but I think I can do almost the same exercises as all the other dumbbells, barbells, that hammer that they swing around and hammer and hit. I can do all those exercises. So then I said I had to make it strong enough to be able to withstand that kind of abuse. So we use the same steel as building a building.
Yeah, and I mean, I know from obviously we got to see the product, and I guess we'll go ahead and get the product plug in there. If they want to, well, first of all, I have to come up with the name. You're rocking the hat, you're rocking the shirt. DJ and I are jelly. We want some of those hats next time you come down so we can wear them on the show. But talk about the name of the company, and then if they want to go learn more about the products, where can they visit?
Yep. So my kids are, not my kids, my client kids. It's like having 100 family members. So I went to these guys and I said, hey, listen, we're going to have a contest and we have to come up with a name for this tool. And I said, you know what I like, you know who I am, you know what I'm about. It has to have some sort of a meaning through Christ or, something like that. And we got a list of 20 names, and my wife and I were hiking in Utah. We were going to take one day to pick out the word that, the name that we liked. And we narrowed it down to 5. Ronin was like almost our first choice until we read the definition of arete. And some people pronounce it arete. I say arete, it's a little easier to say. But that word arete means excellence. It means reaching one's true potential or full potential. And there's a couple more definitions off of it, but it's a Greek word. And it reminded me of that movie 300. Because I remember when they were shooting that movie, there was a bunch of bodybuilders that were our modern day bodybuilders that didn't fit what it looked like back then if they didn't have machines and squat racks and things like that. So it was almost like a functional look because, you remember back when they were recruiting linemen, they were finding the ones in Nebraska that were throwing hay bales because they were, well, it was the same thing with this movie. So I told them that, hey, I like that movie. And I gave them the history on that. So one kid, his name is Matt, he came up with the name and the contest was $100.
Okay.
So we picked a name, but I told him not to tell me who thought of the name. So I went back to the gym. I said, we picked Arite. And Matt raised his hand. I'm the one, he was just so happy that we picked his name. He didn't want the $100.
Yeah, it was just more about
the
opportunity.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And is it just arite.com? What's the website?
Well, it's Arite by JW. So one of the guys is helping me with I don't know how to start a business like that. I know how to personal train. I know how to start a personal training business, but I wanted to make sure I dotted all my, I's and all that stuff and crossed my T's and make sure that, because I feel like this brand and this apparatus is global. Like if you're trying to innovate something, we went through all this market research and found there's no tools like that. Some of the ones that were close to it didn't do the same thing. And it just felt like this could be gigantic, way bigger than I initially thought, and way bigger after, even when I spoke to DJ, way bigger than even what I was thinking before I even talked to him,
Right.
So when I came up with this name, the definition was something that we wanted to make sure we got across to everybody. And the word finisher is actually in the Bible. And I said, and I don't know how it came to me, because the first name of the bar was the beginner, because I was associating with the beginning of weight training, the beginning of, like a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old that his father says, hey, it's time for him to strength train. And they put him on a squat and they start benching him and they start doing all that stuff. But my youth bar is something that you start with that you can use, and it really isn't considered weight training. It's considered plank walking,
Sure.
and that's the education we're trying to get past to people. And and then when I kept putting people on it, they were like, hey, listen, it shouldn't be called a beginner. It should be called a finisher. Oh, my goodness, finish me in 1 minute.
Yeah, finish me, like I said, in about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And I like that finish the race. Yeah. I got it.
Yeah.
I got you.
Absolutely. No, I love the correlation, especially because of my history with Herschel Walker. In high school, Herschel was, my idol as a running back, and then I got a chance to meet him as a recruit at University of Georgia, and then eventually we were teammates in Minnesota. Although that's a very interesting story how that happened. Anybody that did the history knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the fact that his workouts were just based on body weight, right? So we wanted to test him one day. Say, hey, Herschel, you do all those push-ups, sit-ups every day, and some man-ups, I think. Let's see what you can do on the bench. And he went over, with that typical 225-pound test, and he was pumping out so many that we just walked away. So okay. So
I got your weights, man.
Right. So John, with you and your history as it correlates to that, and what Herschel went through, and still actually apparently still works out.
Yeah.
Your device is based on body weight. I mean, there's no weight associated. Can you talk about like the science behind that? Because it's phenomenal how we've used it, and it puts you out of breath. You really get a great workout in a short period of time.
Right. Especially for and real quick before you go, because another thing, and I feel like we're literally plugging your product. Clearly we believe in it. We don't normally kind of do this, but a lot of people, because we talk a lot about business people too, and we're all busy, we're running around, and I don't have time to work out. I mean, like your workout can be like a minute and you're done. So I think that's a lot to be said for people who are too busy to work out. Sorry, I just wanted to kind of get that in there.
So we're familiar with Bruce Lee, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Bruce Lee, if you watch his katas, they were movements and then contractions. And he was so ripped and shredded. He did do some weight training, but at 135 pounds, I forget the pounds of pressure he had for his kicks and his punches was greater than like a 250-pound man. So what that did, what that prompted me to find out and learn a little bit more about that type of training. So if you think of our SEALs or you think of, our military, I need to have the strength of a 300-pound man, but I can't scale a wall if I'm 300 pounds. I have to be 200 pounds. And you remember that safety Adam Archuleta?
Yep.
Remember him?
Yep.
So his crazy workouts were based almost on the same thing.
Okay.
Right? So that time under tension is not, it's a contraction and then it's a hold, as opposed to a repetition where you have a positive movement and a negative movement. I'm still in a positive the entire time, and I'm trying to increase the duration of my positive. So if I take it out of sports and I put it to a elderly woman, I want her to have more time under tension and density because she picked up her grocery bags and she now took them out of her car. That's one lift, picking them up. Now, what do you do with them when you have the groceries in your hand? You got to walk to your house. You got to put them away.
Right.
So that's more of what is more relatable to our sports and function of life than just going and sitting on a shoulder press machine and doing 25 reps.
Yeah, you're not sitting there with the grocery bags doing this. You're like picking it up, you're carrying it, and that's that like extended. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's functional training. That's why it's the foundation. That's why it's the core. So that's why you start revolutionizing things when you start to actually educate people. People get mad at me. They're like, well, how does that correlate to this, to a bench press in football? I said, okay, well, at what time in football are you going to be on your back pressing? Unless you're getting a guy off of you that just knocked you down.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we took the same thing and we said, okay, let's relate it to football, really. Let me stand up, take the same 225 pounds and push it straight out in front of me as if I was blocking somebody. That's as closely as I can relate.
No, it makes sense because you're on the ground, you're pushing, and you're in that stance. If you're in your blocking, right?
Yeah. So imagine me saying that to a strength training coach of Alabama. Or he don't want to talk to me.
Well, you're having some success. I know you can't talk really about the clients, but tell us a little about like who's using the product. I mean, you're working with all these MMA guys and pro athletes. Who are you working with?
Again, back to decide to dominate. I decided last summer after I spoke to Elijah Oliver, was a wrestler for University of Indiana. He was a 4-time All-American. He now coaches at the University of Maryland. I met him at a wrestling conference and really opened my eyes up because I sent him to my Instagram to show him what the bar was all about. And I was supposed to meet him at 4:00 to work out. It was 4:10. He didn't show up. Thank God I had his number. I called him up and said, hey, where are you? He goes, man, honestly, to be honest with you, I did look at your Instagram. I'm a workout guy and I do this and I do that. And he's telling me all the stuff he does. And he was like, I looked at your Instagram. You got 10-year-olds on that bar. You got 12-year-olds bar. You got some ladies. You got the He said, so I was thinking maybe it's not for me.
It's not for me.
Yeah. So I said, Elijah, I said, please just come downstairs right now. So he goes, all right. I said, you gave me your word. So he said, all right. He came downstairs. Within 15 steps on the way down, he started to go on his way back. He started shaking. And I started smiling.
Elijah and I have a lot in common, I see.
I said to myself, I got you. I got you. By the time we got done, he couldn't finish the workout. He was sitting on the floor, shaking my hand.
Yeah.
And shaking his head. And he's just, I don't understand.
How does that do that? Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And you think about the best people with time under tension, what, wrestlers? MMA fighters? And they can't do any more than my 12-year-old.
Sure.
Or my 60-year-old because it's not practiced. So if I'm engaged and I'm battling somebody, the person who gives up first is the guy that could lose possibly. Right. But what if you're giving up together? It's almost like a gentleman's agreement. I'm tired, you're tired. Let's circle back out to the middle and start all over again. But what if you didn't have to do that? What if you had endless strength and endless control and endless power and endless explosiveness
All the time, right?
all the time? That is what I consider mastery.
Mm.
That is what I consider the same thing is when I was going through all my trouble in life and I only called on God when I was in trouble. And instead of having him there all the time, ready to go, and me ready to go, that's the same thing as your muscles. I may not have to use them all the time, but when I need them, they are ready to go.
Man, you got a future in some ministry too. I feel like if you're not going down that path already, I see some parallels with the faith muscles. Got to be strong all the time too.
Come on.
And I know you're working with pitchers too, because you were talking about the back on the bar and kind of leaning back with what it does for the rotator cuff and the shoulders for preventing injury.
We have a team of doctors. We have 2 chiropractors. We have a functional neurologist. We have actually the functional neurologist chiropractor is right in Cape Charles across the Bay Bridge Tunnel from you guys. Okay, and that guy's amazing. He's the one that came up with the study of the guy, the baby's crawling and all that stuff. Wow. And all that information, that science is on my website. And so we have 2 chiropractors, we have functional neurologists, we have an orthopedic surgeon, we have a cardiologist. Like when you did it, you started breathing hard. Why? Well, I went 3 feet and I'm breathing like I ran 100 meters. Right. What is that? Sure. So I had to be able to explain all of that stuff. Science behind it. Yeah. So once I started working with those guys, I got educated. One of the big things that I was really surprised at was I trained this kid, Matt Hill, from my neighborhood, who he was on the Dallas Cowboys, and he got released. He came to me for the summer. For the summer, we worked on core stuff, functional training. We worked on time under tension. He did the high plank walks, low plank walks, plank jumps. And in order to do that, move forward, you have to dorsiflex. So your feet have to go like this. Well, that's that push-off muscle. That's the anterior tibialis, which is in the front, where the shin is. And the lengthening with the gastrocnemius, the soleus, going into the Achilles had to be lengthened. So if I can drive that foot closer to that shin, I can get more push-off.
Sure.
So he was running like a 4.6, and then the Denver Broncos had him come in. They did a tryout for the Denver Broncos, and after the summer, he ran a 4.53. And he called me up. He goes, "What did we do to increase my speed? We didn't run once." And at the time, I really didn't give him a great answer because I didn't know that's what it was doing, because all I was concentrating on planks and time under tension. But then I look back at the feet and I see the feet and the push off. I said, "Hey, the physical therapist, we got to do some research on this." Wow. Because my wrestlers attacking the back leg during wrestling. You can't attack the back leg. You got to shoot for the front leg. How's he attacking the back leg? Because he kept overshotting the front leg. And he was like, "John, I don't know what's going on. I'm just pushing off better." So that's when we started doing a lot of research, doing a lot of studying. I sent DJ that information the other day as to what all the muscles from your hands all the way to your toes that are engaged and turned on for those movements.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Felt like every muscle when I was on it.
No doubt. It affects everything. So, John, obviously the name of our company, Sports Innovation X, this is what the show's powered by. Innovation being the key word. When you were in college, especially, you're a football player, did you ever think that you would have something this innovative? I mean, did you grow up being creative?
Or like an entrepreneur? Did you have like a lemonade stand? I mean, you're a businessman now.
I did have a lemonade stand.
Okay. There was an entrepreneur in there.
And actually, DJ, you appreciate this. I had a Kool-Aid stand.
Okay, hold on. I can appreciate that too now.
My dad would have been your number one customer.
But the problem was I didn't make any money because I drank all the Kool-Aid. It was so hot outside, I kept pouring me a glass.
That's great.
So when I was growing up, my father was very strict. He was in the Navy, He was very, very strict. We couldn't leave the yard. Anytime you asked for anything, by the time Dad can't, it was gone. No, you know. So I spent a lot of time, believe it or not, I spent a lot of time outside by myself. Now, at the time, I didn't think I was a smart guy. I was in all those remedial classes, so I was withdrawn. And then my upbringing, we were so poor, I would never speak in class. I actually, when they don't do it anymore, and thank God they don't do that. But, I used to go around the room during Christmas time and say, oh, what'd you get for Christmas? And I used to accumulate everybody's stuff that they got because I got nothing. So I said, oh, what'd you get? I said, oh, I got a watch. I got a pair of sneakers. Hey, where is all this? Oh, I left it at home, because of the embarrassment of being, poor.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time digging holes. I had chickens that I spent a lot of time sitting in their coop, cleaning their coop. I was very withdrawn. I was bullied. We lived in a town where we moved probably 12 or 13 times into one town because we kept getting evicted because, I don't know what my parents were doing, and then ultimately they got divorced. I saw a couple things as a kid that I probably shouldn't have seen. One of which was in the one town, it was predominantly a black area, and they used to drag race down the street. And I was walking to my cousin's house, and he was on a corner screaming, crying with a big group of people. One of his friends was crossing the street, and these two cars were drag racing, and it hit the girl that he was crossing the street.
My.
I was one of those inquisitive people. The adults were trying to keep the kids back. I actually ran around in the middle of the road to see what they were stopping all the kids from looking at. And I looked down and I gasped. This girl had, I don't know if I can get graphic, but this girl lost half of her head on the ground, and I could see part of her skull with the hair coming out and a thickness of blood coming from her head to the side of the road.
Wow.
And I froze. And all probably my aunt or uncle, somebody grabbed me and started running with me, cover my eyes up. But nobody ever talked about it. Nobody ever got me any therapy. Nobody ever, And then the second incident was my cousin. She walked outside with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and her friend took it from her. And she turned around nicely, walked back in the house, grabbed a steak knife, and walked to him and stuck it in his stomach.
Whoa, my God.
Oh yeah, and she, went to a prison and all that stuff, and these are things that stuck with me. These are things that made me like dream at night and scared, and when I went to sleep at night, my coat rack came to life.
Wow.
Instead of going to the bathroom, I just wet the bed, and lay on the other side of it, because I was deathly afraid at night. Yeah. So I had to really overcome a lot of things on my own. I had a really nice family that I was friends with that got me into football in 5th grade.
You mentioned that when we were together, that football kind of got you out like it does a lot of folks.
Yeah.
In our first meeting.
I remember I went to my friend's house. We just moved to the area. I went to a kid down the street, and his father said, you ever play football? And I'm like, we had no TV, so I had no idea what football was. And so I said, I don't know what football is. He said, oh, do me a favor, race my son. So I beat his son by a mile. But after I got lay on the ground because I wasn't in shape. So he was like, here, take these papers and bring them to your mom. It's only $25 to join, and I want you to play football for me. And I said, okay. I went home. I put the paper on the counter. Actually, I put it in my room, and I never gave it to my mom because the answer is no.
Right. Yeah. $25 not going to happen.
I mean, yeah. So I went back to his house maybe a week later. He said, hey, did you give that to your mom? I said, no. He said, do you want to play football? I said, I don't know, And he was like, oh, he kind of figured it out. He was like, you know what? I'll get you your helmet, your shoulder pads, and we'll, I'll bring you to practice because nobody was picking me up for practice. So the first day, he lined me up on the outside, and he said, I want you to run right here, get that ball, and run to that line. And I said, okay. We messed up a couple times, and then I finally got it, and I ran, I hit the corner, and I darted for 70 yards down the sideline and scored a touchdown. And everybody was jumping all over me. The only thing I could think of was that was the hardest darn thing I ever did. I'm laying on the ground, I'm gassed, I'm finished for the entire game, and now you piled on top of me. So it's bad enough getting myself up. I got all my friends, and that's when I started being a little bit more social. That's when I started to come out of my closet a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I always like to ask this question almost all the guests is if there's one thing that you kind of grew up with and or learned in your sports days, obviously your collegiate career, high school, all the way up to even, your professional career. What is one of those things that you think that has most helped you now in your business career? Because we have a lot of folks that are interested in sports and business and kind of, we call athletes in the office. And that's a big part of DJ's book. Like what is that thing or some of those things you think that have most helped you from a mindset perspective?
Yeah. So most of the teams I was on was losers. I don't think I've ever had a winning record. So I associated with the rest of my life with football, and I still do. Anytime I hit something that is a little bit, any adversity, I use, all right, John, it's fourth quarter, and in those games, in that fourth quarter, even if we're losing, I always thought we could win. I've seen it before. If I was 30 points down, give me the ball. Everybody else gave up, but give me the ball. And I was going to run. I remember one time it was my stepfather came to one of my games. It was the first time anybody has ever come to my games from my family. I was so nervous. I fumbled 3 times.
Oh man.
I got one back. So I finally got it together and we ended up winning. I had 3 touchdowns. My mom was there, right? And they had never gone to any games. I'm running and down the field, and I'm running towards my stepfather because he's in the back of the end zone. And I'm like, yeah. I finally scored. And then after the game, I walk over to my mom. I said, hey, did you see my scores? She said, no, I went to the store.
Oh.
She had left the game and went to the store to get herself something and came back within the 3 touchdowns that I scored.
Oh, man.
So I was like, all right, I got to do this for myself,
Right.
And that's how I started weaving my way through life.
Wow. Yeah. And really, John, you say doing it for yourself. One of the things I always like to do or try to do with our broadcasts is correlate the individual, their business with, one of the chapters or a theme within the book. And there's no doubt that your story, from what we've learned and continue to learn about it, is that chapter 4, the title is Every Day's Game Day.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be a great fit for you and your life and what you're going after at this point. Innovation, family, life in general, just staying fit. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I also say that because I used to sit in the tree and play by myself, and I used to set up I used to have this ball of yarn, and I would wrap it around trees and then run and go under it and jump to the side and get ready for football. That somehow that was not in the rest of my family members. I possess that for myself. And I don't know how I got it. I don't know how I know now, but at the time, to go outside and run over a hill to get faster when nobody ever taught me anything, So it's just amazing to me how, I still use certain principles for my everyday life, and I still use, what I've learned in the past to help me with today. And I still never lean on the bad things that happened in life. I've always tried to push through it, overcome it, and don't give it validity, because then you make it real.
Right.
So then that holds you back from the things that you need to do in life. And I always believe that everybody has their mission. And I say, my wife has really made me vulnerable to love because I never had love growing up. Like I saw the same kid that I was on his football team. He would hug and kiss his parents. They hug and kiss on the way to school. And I said, oh man, I wish I had that. I wish I can love something. I wish I can love somebody. So one day I went home and I said, hey mom, I went to give her a kiss. She said, get away from me, boy. What you doing? I just looked at her like, oh, okay, So I've never been. So I put up walls. So every time somebody looked at me, I thought they were talking about me. Every time somebody said, oh, hey, what's up? I thought they were, So I had to really work through and navigate through that to make myself a better person, and we still work on those things today,
Absolutely.
Man, we're getting short on time. There's so many more things I wanted to get to. We didn't get to talk about the bears in your backyard and DJ's mink fur coat in Minnesota. We definitely got to have you back on for sure.
Yeah.
I think my last kind of thoughts are the yarn is interesting because when you were telling that story, I remember I was telling my son probably about a year ago, like, y'all got all these fancy tools and sliding gloves. And, I remember I didn't have anybody to soft toss me at home, and I grew up, in the sticks, North Carolina. And so I bought at a flea market, like this little tennis ball machine. It wasn't even for baseball, but it would lob tennis balls for like to hit. But for me, that was like my soft toss machine. And I ran 2 extension cords all the way to my house to plug that thing in. And I had a fishing net between 2 trees as like my net. And I bought all that at a flea market for like $2. But now, I mean,
innovation.
It's crazy, like the edge that our athletes today can get that we didn't have growing up with your technology and all these other technologies to get ahead. I just think it's amazing to see where like sports has gone and what's out there for everybody. And obviously that's what we do at Sports Innovation X. We're always looking for those innovative products and services to help people get an edge. I know next time you come in town, I want to get you with the Admirals and Pat Cavanaugh, our friend, which we've had him on the show. We're having an amazing season. So anything we can get an edge to get that ECL title.
Absolutely.
Definitely want to get you over there with those guys. And then my buddies at Wesleyan, where I played baseball, obviously, I want to get you in with them too.
Oh, yeah. I'll go anywhere. That's that snooze button I was telling you about. I don't have it.
Exactly. No, same. When you said that when we met, Kate, who was with us, looked over at me because I say the same thing all the time.
Oh, do you?
And no time for sleep, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I like God walked this earth and spread the word without any social media, no telephones. Who am I not to take advantage of what we have today to spread that word? And who am I to be able to complain about it? And I believe that's my mission. That's part of my mission.
Tell me, future in ministry. Right.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you being part of that, taking on that mission and spreading the good word.
Yeah. Thank you.
Both in from a biblical standpoint and certainly from a physical standpoint to help us stay healthy or get healthy or get stronger. I definitely feel stronger.
I mean, thanks for being on the show today. So one more time, what's the website for everybody? One more time before you go.
It's aretebyjw.com is the website. My Instagram is aretebyjw. And those are the 2 places where you can see what we're doing. I went to the conference in Atlantic City, Wrestling Championships, and I was showing the product, but I ended up getting 12 clients out of it because they live in Utah. So I actually, I still train also.
Well, I got my 4 Ironman sprints coming up, so I think we might have to bring an extra bar next time you're down. We're gonna buy one. I'm gonna keep one here in the office for everybody.
And you need a 4x6 piece of carpeting in the bar. And
I'm blaming it on the carpet the first time you were here. That's what it was. The carpet was moving. All right, JW. Well, thanks for being on the show with us today. We really appreciate it. Yeah, man. Cheers. Have a good day. God bless. All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.